When you think about AI, what do you see? Software, code, something clean, digital, living somewhere in the cloud. But that's just the tip. Beneath it is an iceberg that almost nobody talks about. Servers consuming as much energy as entire cities. Data centers cooled with millions of liters of water per day. Satellites built from metals whose names you don't even know. Submarine cables crossing oceans. And at the base of it all, mines. Cobalt mines in Congo. Lithium evaporation ponds in the Atacama Desert. Rare earths processed almost exclusively in China. We look at AI and we see the future. Clean, elegant, digital. But the chain behind it is dirty, physical, and fragile. And here's why it matters. Everyone talks about UBI, Universal Basic Income, as the answer to automation. Robots do the work, the state hands out the money, everyone's happy. Elon Musk says so, Sam Altman says so, but nobody asks, if the whole system depends on a material supply chain that runs through the most unstable regions on the planet, how safe is the dream? I dug in, and what I found is far stranger than I expected. The model everyone's selling looks something like this. AI boosts productivity, companies make massive profits, the state taxes them, the money reaches the people. Simple, elegant, looks great on a slide. I did the math. I took the combined profits of the 500 biggest companies in the world, Fortune Global 500, nearly $3 trillion, and divided them by every person on the planet. You get about $360 per year. Not per month, per year. That's one iPhone every 3 years. That's UBI if you literally redistribute all the profit. All of it. 100%. Every cent. $360. That's the dream. And I asked myself, wait, where does the money actually come from? Not theoretically, for real, concretely. Because it looks good on a slide, but slides don't pay bills. But even if the money could somehow be found, there's another problem, one that nobody puts on the table. Let's say, hypothetically, the money is found. Productivity grows enough. Everyone gets a monthly check. And I asked myself, what happens to prices? Think about the housing market. The same apartments, the same landlords. But suddenly, everyone has guaranteed income from the state. And the landlord isn't stupid. He sees the check, he raises the rent. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Money comes in on one side and drains out the other, straight into the pocket of someone who was never the target of the program. If you give money without increasing the housing supply, you don't help renters, you help landlords. I don't know exactly how large the effect would be at a national scale. The evidence from UBI experiments so far doesn't give a clear verdict on inflation. But the logic is hard to dodge. In any market where supply doesn't grow along with demand, extra money goes into prices. I didn't invent that. And here's where it gets interesting. Because everything we've discussed so far is one country, one economy, but UBI doesn't live in a bubble. Let's say it works somewhere. Germany, the US, Japan. A wealthy country pulls it off. Automation, taxes, UBI. Everything runs smoothly. Now, what does Bangladesh do? What does Congo do? What does Bolivia do? The countries that have neither tech nor infrastructure, what do they get? Nothing. They watch the West live off robotic profits. And suddenly, citizenship becomes the most valuable thing you have. Not what you know, not what you can do, where you were born. In the UBI world, the most valuable skill isn't programming. It's your passport. And I asked myself, doesn't this create migration pressure like we've never seen? Everyone wants into the UBI country, and the UBI country wants to protect its money. So you build walls, real or bureaucratic, to keep redistribution only for your own. Translated from corporate speak, universal means our citizens. Now, here's what surprised me the most. And this is where it all connects. Robots are physical. They're made of real things. Things that come from specific places. Lithium, for batteries. The largest reserves, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina. Cobalt, for processors and electronics. The Democratic Republic of Congo, a single country, produces roughly 75% of the planet's cobalt. 75% from one country. And rare earths? China controls about 70% of mining production and nearly 90% of processing. AI seems virtual, but its supply chain is as physical as it gets. The countries we call peripheral actually hold enormous leverage. Congo restricted cobalt exports in 2025, and the market felt it immediately. If Bolivia forms a lithium cartel and OPEC for batteries, automation doesn't stop, but it gets more expensive, slower, more vulnerable. Nobody in Silicon Valley talks about vulnerability when selling the dream. Now I'm putting the pieces together, and when I saw the full chain, I stopped. If resources become expensive, automation becomes expensive. If automation becomes expensive, profits drop. If profits drop, taxes drop. And if taxes drop, where does UBI get funded? UBI doesn't depend on a vote in parliament. It depends on cobalt, energy, and cargo ships. It's a domino chain, and each piece is in a different country, under a different jurisdiction with different interests. The structure taking shape looks something like this. Technological countries control AI and computing power. Peripheral countries export raw resources. Profit concentrates at the center. The periphery stays a supplier. Doesn't that sound a little familiar? The same countries that 200 years ago exported cotton and rubber now export cobalt and lithium. The form has changed. The structure, not so much. I'm not saying it's a plan. It's not a conspiracy. It's a trend. But it's a trend that nobody promoting UBI puts on the table. Old empires had flags. New empires have patents. UBI isn't a social policy. It's the endpoint of an industrial chain that almost nobody sees. And that changed me. I didn't start from UBI is wrong. I started from UBI sounds good and arrived at UBI depends on things nobody controls. So what did I learn? I learned that we see the tip of the iceberg and think that's all there is. We see the AI, we see the code, we see the promise, and we never look underwater. UBI isn't a solution. It's a hope that depends on a chain so long and so fragile that it's almost absurd anyone presents it with confidence on a slide. But I also saw a bigger pattern. Every time someone proposes a simple solution to a complex problem, the solution sounds good precisely because it ignores the complexity. Automation solves production. UBI solves distribution. Everyone will be fine. It's a beautiful story, but stories don't pay the rent. We now know something that most people talking about UBI don't say. We know that behind every robot is a mine, that behind every promise is a dependency, that universal will probably never truly mean universal. Next time you hear someone talking about UBI as something inevitable, ask one thing. Where does the cobalt come from? And see if they have an answer. Remember the iceberg from the beginning? We see the tip, clean, digital, elegant. But now we know what's underneath. And underneath, it's dirty, physical, and fragile. And that's what holds everything up.